Information provided on this podcast is intended to be educational and informational only and is not considered to be formal legal advice. The listener should not take or refrain from taking action based on its content. Any listener in need of legal opinion upon which to rely in decision-making should consider formally engaging an attorney to review relevant facts in detail and examine the pertinent law as it applies to those facts.
So, you decided you want more out of your life. More than the 9 to 5. More than paycheck to paycheck. More than lifelong debt. But that leaves questions. Where do I go from here? What can I do without any money, connections, or experience? My goal is to not only provide you with answers to those questions, but also to motivate people in an authentic way, mentor people who don't have mentors, give back, and hear some inspiring stories along the way. If you're not going to show people what's possible, who is? My name is Iler, and this is Ground Zero.
Yes, welcome everyone to the second episode of Dream Chasers Ground Zero. So Suzy, I was telling you a little bit before that we were going to do the always and forever, and then we ended up just kind of like scrapping it for now. I really appreciated everything that you had said, where you were like, narrow down on your brand, make sure that everything is understood on both ends with your audience and with what you're trying to achieve. So that's where we're going with this. We're going to talk about your ground zero moments that have led you to where you are. So why don't you tell everyone who you are and a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on, April. It's truly a pleasure. And I just really cannot wait to watch you grow and just take over this space. It's going to be phenomenal. But for the listeners, my name is Suzy Sevier, and I actually currently live in Cambridge, England. My husband is active duty Air Force, and so we are stationed over here for another 2 years, and we've been here for almost 2 years. He's getting his PhD at the University of Cambridge, and I am working as a program manager for a biotech company over here. But I guess just a little bit more, before our move over here, we lived in Colorado, and I was working, doing the grind, and then getting an MBA. So actually Michael moved here before I did because I still had to finish my MBA and then slowly transition to the world of Cambridge.
Yeah. So I know before we were talking about that move and doing what you want to do and not really caring what anyone else says, talk about those ground zero moments for you where you're like, it might not be perfect, I'm just gonna do it, it is what it is.
Yeah, so there were a couple things that prepared me and I didn't even know, right? When I look back on it, I'm like, oh no, I definitely needed those things to happen. So there were a couple, there were two, I guess, that helped with that move. So the first one actually was for my undergraduate degree, how I chose my school. Initially, my parents were actually like, you need to apply to 8 schools. And I was like, okay, whatever, I'll just do it. And I got towards the end of the list, not really knowing where else to apply because I had already applied to the places that I could think of. And all of a sudden I was like, whatever, I'm going to apply to Hawaii Pacific University, right? Let's just give it a shot. And I got in and I was like, well, okay, well now I'm going, So there was that was one of the moments that led me to this ground zero moment for this. But then another one too was, life goes on, and I was living in Iowa after I had moved away from Hawaii, and something had just happened, and I was like, I need more, right? I feel stagnant in this. What am I going to do, right? Although I know that comfort is here, I need more than comfort, right? I need growth in order to actually be happy. So that was part of it, number 2. But so then moving here, right? I was like, okay, I've done it twice. I know that I can do it, but what do I have to actually tell myself and actually feel to make that happen? And actually the biggest switch for me personally, after applying to 50 plus jobs over here, right? Because I didn't know what I was going to do, and I didn't come into it knowing, and I mean, even trying to apply from across the ocean, I don't really know if that would have worked anyways. I knew I was going to need an address over here, but I actually detached myself or my identity from having a W-2. So I was like, who I am as a person does not correlate to the job that I'm in. So that was actually a huge ground zero moment for me, because once my brain switched, like applying to jobs was easier. I was just applying, not really like worrying about it, because I was like, like if the company doesn't want me, like I have to just keep doing what I have to do. Like I know who I am as a person, and I'm just going to have to make sure that that person shines through when I like do finally get an interview. And so that was like a big like moment for me.
So when you were doing that though, I mean, like even for me, I know that like I have this plan and I have this dream and I want to do it this way and it's going to work like this. And then it obviously never works that way. But to be discouraged and to still do what you did and like go through that, like I'm going to apply to these things. And if I don't get it, it is what it is. Like I'm not defined by that W-2. How do you keep yourself going if you get those no's and you're like, okay, it's not working. Like what was that for you?
Yeah, so there was highs and lows, but it was like keeping myself active as well, right? Because like when you get no's over and over and over and over, that is definitely like a blow to who you are. But it's like, okay, well, what can I do to overcome these blows, like for myself? So, like working out was a big thing for me. Like listening to podcasts and just like more inspirational stuff was a big thing for me. Continuing to read, because you can get down this rabbit hole of like, okay, well, I've applied to 10 and they've said no. So like, why do I keep trying? And you keep trying because you keep yourself like you keep your endorphins going, right? Like you keep that energy up. And I know that like the energy get lows, but even little things like, and this might sound silly, but I totally believe like what I intake is like what like slowly comes out of my soul. So like I was drinking smoothies more because I was like, okay, I want that like nutrition to not bog me down, right? Because like I could easily go into the cabinet and grab chips, but like nothing about those chips are going to make me feel better. So I had to become proactive about like my surroundings as well, right? Like making myself work out, like finding those people on Instagram, to like follow along with, like making sure I was doing those healthy habits. A big thing too was that I joined a book club so that I could meet people, right? Because for work, like that's a huge social setting for people. And because I was not having that social setting, I was like, okay, well, what else am I going to do to meet people, And so I joined a book club and I just started going to other events. And when you are in a city, I don't really know if you notice events unless you're actually looking for them, right? But like I went to meetup.com and right away I was like, whoa, there's stuff going on all of the time, right? Like the meetups, the book clubs, I can start volunteering. It was like the list was endless. So making sure that I just like was putting myself out there too, right? Like leaving the house, because like in your house is where you can be super comfortable. So I was just making sure that I was like doing things differently to make sure I didn't get into that slump.
Now, how has COVID affected your drive to keep going and doing more and wanting to be everywhere? Like, how has that affected you? And has that given you a ground zero or like not at all?
Yeah, no, so absolutely. So like with COVID over here, especially the first lockdown was a little over 100 days. So what I mean by that was that we could only leave the house to work out once a day and buy groceries, or go to the pharmacy. So that in itself, I'm then back into like, cool, well, I have a job, but I can't go into the office and I can't go to the meetups and I can't do any of these things now. So what do I do? And I mean, Michael was home with me as well, but that's like a whole different thing to navigate too, right? Okay, like now I have to spend 24/7 with one human. How is this going to go? And it went great. But initially, I just said like, okay, well, what are we going to do, right? Because we don't have a TV just because that's a choice that we have made. And so things, Michael and I started a mini book club. And actually through that, like the first book we read was The Slight Edge. And what that book talks about is being 1% better every day. So we were like, okay, this is something we have to implement again. And it was almost just like using those same habits to stay in that good mood, right? Like we're going to work out. If we have to work out twice a day, we will. We actually got really lucky for the first lockdown and the weather was really nice. So we told ourselves like, we are going to sit outside once a day because that vitamin D literally brightens everything, We just made sure that we like had something to do. But the fourth book that we got to, actually, it talked about multiple streams of income. And Michael and I were, I mean, like when you're not working, you have a lot of time to be creative as well. And so that book like talked about stocks, and it talked about other like smaller streams. And then it finally got to real estate investing, actually. And Michael had just looked at me and he's like, we're going to do this. And I was like, okay, let's go, you know? And so that was another ground zero moment, because once we found out about the world of real estate investing, again, like so much more changed. And like that blew my mind, right? Because what we think of stability in a workplace, like I found out quickly that like with an employer, you know, like you have a 50-50 chance of knowing when you're going to exit. Like 50% is with your employer and 50% is with you, right? Like nobody actually gets to decide, have 100% control of when they can potentially leave. And so when I learned about real estate investing, knowing that like you don't have to trade your time for money and you can have the hours that you want and need to like pursue your passions, that was like another explosion. Like, holy cow, why am I helping achieve somebody else's dreams and putting mine on the side, you know, because during that 9 to 5 time, you are accomplishing somebody else's dreams. And so I'm just supposed to do mine from whatever 5 to 10 at night, or like 5 in the morning, from 5 to 9 in the morning. Like that, once I found out about this community, like that blew my mind.
I love that for you, because I feel like so many people, and myself included, I always question my dream. You know, is it okay for me to be creative? Do I need to position myself this way and do this because it's the safe thing to do? And you're out here making these bold decisions, just doing what you want, and you're doing great. It's leading you to bigger and better things. And that's why I love your story so much, because for me, you know, and like a lot of other people, I feel like it all has to make sense. If it's not making sense now, is this the right way? And even though you were like, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, you can totally see a pattern of how everything tied together, and like everything was meant to happen the way that it was supposed to. And it's only getting better from here for you. And I love that so much. So I don't know if I already kind of asked this a little bit ago, or maybe I could just ask it a different way, but what would you say to someone who's maybe transitioning into college or transitioning out of college and is wondering, how do I know if it all makes sense? What do I do for me? Is the creative idea okay? Like I mean, I guess those are like really big questions to answer, but like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I would have loved to have talked to you at my 18-year-old self, my 22-year-old self, and even now at 29, I'm like, what can Suzy like inspire me to do? Like, you know, like I there's just so much to be gained from your story.
No, yeah, absolutely. And, you know, like I've thought about this for myself as well. Like, what could I have done differently? And there's like a couple of things, but I'm going to start with like one that just has to do with money. Like, we go through high school learning nothing about financial literacy, and majority of our parents do not talk about it. Like, this is your opportunity to truly, truly think about it. I mean, I know like this book has changed many people's lives. I read it later in the game, so it wasn't as impactful for me, but a lot of people have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Yeah. And in that book, he just really explains like what the job space is like, you know, and some people work during college and some people don't, right? And that's not really where you're going to find like your true career. Like, yes, you can do internships and stuff, which I totally think everyone should do, because that gives you like a 3-month time span where you can actually find out if you like something or not, you know? But think about your money differently. Like, seriously, do not waste it. Because if somebody would have told me when I was 18, you can retire before you're 65, you can go against the grain if you just start now, right? Like, you don't need that extra pair of shoes. You do not need that coffee every day. Like, you can seriously, the more money you can save, and I'm not saying say no to all your friends, like, oh no, I can't go out, I have to save money. But you can find different ways to still go out and have fun, but not spend as much and not spend money every day. Because then when you get to the position where you are graduating, like no matter what route you go, right? Like, you can go into a traditional W-2, you can go into real estate investing, whatever that may be. When you start applying for jobs, you can actually apply for the ones that you want because you have some money saved. And that changes the jobs that you apply to drastically, right? You're not just applying to every job that you see because you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to run out of financial aid money, or I'm not going to want to stay working at this pool every summer. What do I do now? Like, I wish I would have been in the position where I was actually applying for the jobs that I wanted rather than the jobs that I just saw that came up in my like traditional career field, because then you can actually be yourself. And when you go into the interviews, you can express like, this is who I am and this is why I think I'm a good fit, instead of reading, you know, everything about the company and everything about the CEO and tailoring your resume to fit it perfectly and being like, yes, I do think that I would love to enjoy working at a cubicle from 9 to 5 every day and looking at spreadsheets all day long. You know, if you are that kind of person, I am so proud of you and that is awesome. But like, a lot of people aren't that. Like, they want to be free and creative, you know. And even another thing, apply for jobs that are bigger than what the qualifications are, because if you do get an interview there, like, you can experience those interviews and practice. I mean, that's a big thing too. You can just apply just to practice interviews, because those are difficult the first few times, especially if you're not used to them, right? I mean, extroverted or introverted, it doesn't really matter. If you haven't been in interviews, the feeling is still daunting. You don't really know what questions are going to come at you. Like, it's all just so new. So yes, like, save the money, I think, would be the biggest thing, so that when you go to apply for jobs, you can apply for the jobs that you actually want, instead of being in that scarcity mindset, you're more of like in that abundance mindset.
Yeah. And for the people who maybe don't want to go to college or aren't sure about college, they're just kind of like, all right, I graduated high school and now like I don't want to throw that financial aid money, but like, what do I do? And at that same time, I feel like maybe if you aren't sure, you would have to like find your peace. And for you, it was cutting out the TV and spending time reading and really figuring out your own thoughts and your own opinions and doing what you want to do and having the energy and the inspiration without the chaos to be able to make those bold choices. So what would you say to those people?
You know, that one's a little more difficult because I am used to the whole traditional, like, you go to college, you get a job, and then you go and get a master's and blah, blah, blah. But like, if you want to just go in to the workforce, that would be a time where you definitely have to take a little more time, like cultivating and meditating, like, on your thoughts. Cause like, where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? I don't know if doing like a personality test online or like a strengths assessment like online would help guide you into some sort of job force, but like, maybe you don't know that you really actually love helping people, right? You're like, well, I like to help people, but what can I do? You know, maybe like reading that and like finding out that you can actually work for a nonprofit instead of having to be like a teacher or a nurse, you know, like just thinking of different ways to apply the one thing that you truly know that you love. You know, like, if you like to work with your hands, you can even Google like, what jobs can I do to work with my hands? Because we all have so many blind spots, right? So like, just using the technology that you have in order to do that. I mean, another great thing, which is more difficult for some people to do, but you could reach out to your teachers, you could reach out to like your counselor or your parents' friends or whatever adults that you've had around you, coaches or whatnot. Maybe even that's like one special person, you know, that's like really guided you through like your high school years, and ask them to give you honest feedback. Like, you have seen me grow over the past 4 years. Like, what could you see me doing? Not what do you want to see me doing? Like, what are my strengths as a person, you know? Because maybe you don't see them as strengths and you see them as a weakness. But if whatever, 5 or 6 people, or even if 2 people tell you the same thing and you had thought about it differently, like, that can be completely eye-opening for you. So it's really just putting yourself out there to ask for that feedback, because a lot of people don't like feedback, and that is okay. I don't know if it's just we don't know how to give it or how to receive it or a little bit of both. But like, you learn a lot about yourself when you create yourself to be able to be open for feedback and not take everything so personally, because that's really where you grow. That's where everything like settles in and you can be like, wow, these are things I need to think about. What can I do with them?
I love that. And it's so crazy to me because that is so simple. And sometimes the most simple thought or next step isn't so easily seen, because that was me at 18. I had jumped right into college. And after a month of being there, I was like, okay, I don't have these professors and high school teachers and everyone looking at me like, April, you have to be the best at everything. You have to do it. Like, they kind of go away a little bit, and it's on me to figure that out. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was kind of like, I was so busy trying to be what everyone else wanted me to be that I hadn't spent any time with myself to figure out, what does April actually want? So, if someone would have said, slow down, maybe go talk to someone, like ask this question, it's like, it just blows my mind that the simplest things are sometimes the hardest and most like invisible ideas that we can't even see when it comes to making those bigger choices that you want so bad for yourself, but you feel like you can't allow yourself to get there. And that's just why I love what you've been able to do. And it's almost like, second nature. You're like, I want to do this big thing, and I'm just going to do it. Like, I love that about you. Like, you're a powerhouse woman, Suzy. I'm so inspired by your story.
No, thank you. And like, I truly hope that one day, like, the school system gets to a place where like senior year, they are talking about financial literacy and they are saying like, hey, here are these few like strength finders tests, take them. Let's actually do a whole class on them, because that could be mind blowing. Like, I'm going to let everyone know I had to take government senior year. It was mandatory as a senior. Nothing about that has stuck. Like, I was not into it, but if you could get like a group of students all talking about what their assessment said and what they think they can do and even what their peers see them as, then it's not this whole like, oh, what 6 colleges did you apply to? It can turn into like, oh, well, with this assessment, like maybe your major in biology should actually be like in engineering, I mean, yes, you can take the course to take the course, right? Because I mean, you have so many credits, you have so many options to explore. But like, I would have preferred to explore that my senior year than like a year or two in, right? Because then, I mean, I hear these horror stories all the time where people change their major sophomore or junior year, but then they're having to stay an extra semester. I'm like, that is thousands of dollars just because like somebody didn't guide us towards the beginning. And I mean, maybe if it's not in the school system, like I wish parents would, but that's a whole nother conversation because we're in this society where we wake up, we work, we come home, and we're supposed to work out and have dinner ready for our family and have our house clean and just be so normal. So, and then you're also just supposed to fit in time to educate your child on life, which is really, really hard. And that's even just for the people who are lucky enough to only have one job. Like when we take in the people who have 2 or who are also going to school and have kids, like that's a whole nother rodeo, And so I don't know when the perfect time is to introduce it, but now that I'm in the space where I am, like, because I think education is so important. I mean, this is actually, sorry, new story, because this adds to it.
No,
so like,
okay.
yeah, no, with Michael going back, because once we leave here, we'll go back to Colorado and Michael will teach at the Air Force Academy. Like one of our big things is that for the seniors, we are going to give them a specific book for graduation, and it's going to talk about financial literacy. And that's just where it starts because we know that it's not happening. And so we are going to make that happen. And I mean, even another way, right? Because I say education is important, but what am I actually doing about it? Like because Michael and I are now in real estate investing, right? And we have an asset and we have another one under contract. So we are actually going to host like financial classes when we are back in the States. We're going to like do a whole community event because we already do monthly community events, but we're going to go in and do like financial classes because it doesn't matter what age you're at. If you were never taught, then you never know. So like, if nobody shows up, nobody shows up, but at least we are giving that opportunity, and like our big term like long-term picture is that when Michael can retire from the Air Force in 7 years, we will have, you know, been in real estate investing long enough to where neither of us will have to go into a W-2. So, I mean, I'm leaving my traditional job at the end of August, but with Michael being in the Air Force, you know, we have to go along with those guidelines, or we choose to because of the situation that we're in. And we want to travel the world and build schools in third world countries because basic education can help solve so many issues, right? Like so many economic issues. It reduces like infant mortality. Even if you just share with farmers, like what they can do, like how they can do farming differently, like that's sustainability within itself. But like you can end, I'm pretty sure, like a third of the world's poverty just with basic education, which is reading. Like that blows my mind. And so that's why I am like, there have just been so many aha moments, but like education is just huge, right? So educating yourself, no matter whatever way that you can, to figure out like what your purpose in life is. And that is where you will find true happiness. You do not have to get that job right away. And you do not have to go to college right away, because if you take 6 months off, if you take a year off to truly figure out like what impact you were meant to make on this world, you will figure it out, right? Like we're all born to make an impact. I strongly believe that. We just have to figure out what that impact is.
I love that. That's incredible. Like you could not have said that any better. And I truly feel like you're speaking to my soul. As a recent now graduate, as a finance major, I have had so many conversations with younger students, because I'm a little bit older than your traditional student, and they feel the same way. Coming into college and now coming out of college, they all have that same kind of mindset where like, we don't really know, you know, what that basic financial education looks like when it comes to like, how do I pay bills here? What does this look like? How do I go about an apartment or financing a car, or financing a house? Like, you know, we learn these formulas and and we apply them, and that's great. But like when it comes to actually doing that in the real world, I mean, we didn't even have anything like this in college as a finance major.
Right.
And I'm not putting my school down. I mean, like it's part of just the way the curriculum is. Like, I really wish we could have taken a couple courses or classes within these courses where they would have been like, okay, here's a hypothetical example. If you're going to do this, this is how you do ... You know, and for me, not that I'm such an expert, but I've had a lot of friends ask me like, how do I get an apartment, or how do I pay electric, or what do I do? What does that look like? And I'm like, hi. Like, I'll show you what I'm doing, but like, you know, you're absolutely right. This stuff isn't taught even to these kids who are like, okay, now I want to go to college. What does financial aid look like? How is that going to affect me? Or if I don't have two parents, or if I have one parent, or whatever, like as far as their income and how that plays a role. Like these are such important things. And I love that you care enough to take the time to do all of this. And if there's any way that I could be a part of this or follow along, like let us, like tell me how viewers and listeners can find you, because I want to be a part of this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And okay, so in order to find us, our website is adventurousrei.com. And then I am on LinkedIn and on Facebook, so you can find me there, Suzy Sevier. I'm sure, because the spelling is a little bit difficult, it'll all be in the show notes. But even thinking about what you said, right? So like we learn in school that if you turn something in late, like you get a bad grade. But yes, nobody tells you if you pay that credit card late, what that those added fees are, and what that could do to your credit. And to me, like that is so much more important than like, oh, if you turn something in late, you're going to get a lower grade. Like, where do these grades come from? I mean, I did really well in school, but like nobody cares about them. Like, I just want to know, like, do you do really well in school because you're really good at memorizing, or like, can you actually apply everything that was taught? I don't know. I just see like a huge disconnect. So just like making sure that I like am out there mentoring, right? Because that's a huge thing for me too. Like I mentor other business students where I got my MBA at the University of Denver, and like questions like this even can sometimes get asked, like, oh, well, what do you do next? Or how did you end up overseas? And it's like, well, you have to figure out your end goal before you can even start at the starting line, right? Like if you don't know where you're running to, how are you going to know that you even want to run there? You know,
Right.
like that's like, we're never thinking with the end in mind because we're in this society where it's so instant gratification, right? But like, really, if you just take a moment to look at it long term, like you will find the answers that you need because nothing good comes quickly. And I say this little, I guess, analogy because I found that I really have loved it. And what it is that like leftovers or food or whatever, like when you stick it in the microwave to either cook it or reheat it up, it's okay, right? Like I'm not going to have a bunch of people raising their hands being like, I love microwave leftovers. But you know what food people are more often talking about? The stuff that's in the slow cooker, the stuff that has been like marinating for a long time, or that has like been on the barbecue for a really long time. The things that we wait for are the things worth waiting for. Like nothing that can be done in a minute or in an hour or in a day is worth it. You know, like, yes, if you're in a fight or flight situation, trust me, it is worth it. I have been in those situations. I understand where you have to make decisions quickly, but like for your long-term happiness and success in this world, like it takes a little more time.
Wow, that's a great analogy, honestly. Like you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I'm blown away. I would love to do this again like a year from now and see like what has changed and where you are and like what that looks like and how things are started and how things are rolling.
No, absolutely. I'd love that. I'd love it.
Well, thank you for sharing all of this. And again, we will throw up everything on the screen with how viewers can find you and follow along. And I can't wait to watch this grow and be a part of it. So definitely like keep me in the loop. I want to be a part of it with you. And for anyone listening or watching, I would love to hear your ground zero moment or just, you know, an amazing story, just like Suzy just said. And plans that you have and dreams that you have. So if you have something that you want to talk about or something that you think I should hear, definitely email me at aprilmunson@protonmail.com. And thank you.